Thank you everyone for joining us and for joining Darien Library this Thursday night for Beer and Cheese Pairings with M. Sauter. She is an award-winning cartoonist, an international beer judge, an advanced Cicerone, a public speaker, and founder of the website Pints and Panels, which focuses on visual beer education, and she started it in 2010. Her first book, Beers for Everyone of Drinking Age, was published back in October 2017, and she's working on, I think you're finished, right, with
I'm
your
finished. Yep.
book right now, and it should be published in April 2022. So look forward to that, and it is called Hooray for Craft Beer. Before we begin, I'd like to mention that programs at Darien Library are made possible by the annual Friends of the Library campaign. We thank you for your support to make programs like this, as well as our collections available to the community. And now Em is going to show us the wonders of cheese and beer. Thank you.
All right, thanks. All right, thank you, everyone. Cheers. I have a presentation that goes with this, so I'm going to share my screen. Here we go. So I am M. Sauter, founder and cartoonist behind Pints and Panels. So there's some illustrations in here. Thank you so much to the Darien Library for having me. This is a really fun, I love coming to the Darien Library. I grew up in Darien. I went to Darien High School, class of 2001, go Blue Wave. So this is a real big honor for me to come and talk at my childhood library where I did like book, I did theater club and stuff. So it's a really big honor to come and talk again about beer. That's my thing. So we're going to talk about beer and cheese. It's the best pairing you never knew existed, and I'm really excited to share it with you today. First things first, I want to talk about, hold on, there we go. I want to talk about how to taste beer. So I recommend that you pour your first beer. The first beer we're going to be talking about is the Hefeweizen. I'm pouring the Weihenstephaner. I think I suggested the Paulaner is also a really good one. There's some local Hefeweizens that are made in Connecticut that are quite good. So please pour your Hef with me, and I'm going to go through how to taste beer. Once you're all set with that, I'll wait 10 seconds so I can have a sip. Hang out for a minute. Oh, this beer is so good. Love it. So I want to walk through how to properly taste beer before we go into our pairing today. First things first is you want to kind of, if you have a table, I want you to put the beer down. I'll do it here. You want to swirl the beer about 45 RPM. So we're thinking about vinyl, we're thinking about records, and you want to swirl it counterclockwise. Why we do that is when you're in a judging setting or in a drinking setting, you kind of get your mind set to do that. And it makes you think, oh, we're tasting beer professionally. This is serious. It's a kind of a thing that a lot of tasters, judges do to get prepared for beer. So you want to swirl it at a 45-degree angle. And then you're going to see all this nice head retention. Everyone hates foam. Foam is the best. Foam is where all the aroma and flavor is concentrated. Foam is like when beer has a tiny hat on. It's like a helmet protecting the beer. So when people are kind of agitated about foam, foam is actually a very important part of the beer process. So you want this nice head. Then you want to do a distance sniff where you want to see if you can smell it from 6 to 8 inches away. Give it a couple sniffs, like see if you can smell it. I can't smell anything, which is fine. Then you want to swirl it again. Here we go. You want to do what's called a drive-by sniff, where you're going to slowly pass it under your nose. And then what do you smell? I got the beer there. When you're talking about Hefeweizens, which I'll talk about in a little bit, you're talking about banana, clove, bubblegum. And I'll talk about why a beer tastes like bubblegum and smells like bubblegum in a little bit. Then give the glass another swirl. You want to take a short sniff. Put it right under your snoot. Take 2 short sniffs. Then you want to do a long sniff. Really get your snoot in there. Everyone, I can't see anybody, but I'm assuming I want snoots and glasses, everybody. And then 1 long sniff. Oh, I really get that Hefeweizen character, which comes from the yeast. Oh, we're going to talk about it. It's going to be great. We can do a covered sniff. That's for serious stuff when you're looking for off flavors or sensory or being extra professional. You put your hand on it, do this. And that's concentrating everything. Then you put your snoot in. And then finally we get to taste the beer. So what you want to do is you want to take a big sip and you want to let it sit in your mouth for about a few seconds. You want to get it warmed up. Because beer actually, the colder the beer is, the less flavor you get. So the warmer the beer is, the more flavor you get. So we'll take a big taste. And when you swallow, you blow out through your nose. Why that is retronasal olfaction. So when you sniff going like in, that's orthonasal. There we go. It took a second. Wow. And then when you blow out, you're actually getting different flavor sensations and aroma sensations when you use, there's aroma like receptors all the way in the back of your throat. And those could pick up different things, which is really, really cool. So yeah, that's how to taste beer. We won't do that all the time. It's something to think about when you're in a setting where you're going to try beer and have a pairing. Beer is professional. I know a lot of people associate beer with like keg parties and Bud Light and all that stuff, and those are great. That's a lot of fun. But beer also can be incredibly serious as well. So we're here to talk about beer and cheese, but I want to talk about the 4 C's when it comes to beer and cheese pairing, or beer and food pairing specifically. There's cut, contrast, clash, and complement. And those 4 C's are the pillars of beer and food pairings. Beer and food are awesome. They're amazing. There are so many different flavors. I'm not going to bash wine. I love wine. But wine kind of doesn't have the edge on beer. There's beers that taste like chocolate. There's beers that taste like, I mean, if you're trying this Hefeweizen with me, you're getting banana and clove and whatnot. There's so many different flavors. There's a huge rainbow of flavors when it comes to beer and food pairing. And so what beer and food can do is when you pair them together using the 4 C's, you can really build a fantastic menu. So one of the first things is cut. We're actually going to talk about that a lot. Beer is a great fat cutter. So like with fatty cheeses, like that brie that we have, it's going to be able to scrub the carbonation. The carbonation is going to go and scrub. I call it the mouth napkin, where the fat will get lifted off your tongue. Think of a steak. Higher carbonation beers are really great at kind of cutting fats and other such things. When we're talking about contrast, we're talking about my favorite combo, one of them, which is salty sweet. When 2 things get together and make a new flavor. Beer is really great for that because beer on the sweet side. We're going to get to that with, that brown ale and that Gouda, with the saltiness of that aged Gouda, with the sweetness of the brown ale. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about contrast. Clashing is when it just doesn't work. There's some really, when you're talking about beer and food pairings, you want to match intensities. And there's sushi, and then you want to have, let's say, like a Bud Light, or you want to have a lighter beer with sushi, or Kolsch, or a light lager, a Pilsner. You wouldn't want to have an imperial stout, something very heavy and dark and high alcohol. It's going to blow out everything and clash, and basically ruin the sushi. That sounds like a terrible pairing. So you don't want to do that. Clashing is the bad word of the 4. And then complement. What complements each other? We're going to get to that Road to Ruin, the double IPA with the blue cheese, and that's a great complementing flavor. So we're going to get to those. So when you're talking about pairing beer and food, think about these 4 C's and how they work. So the first pairing we're going to do is Hefeweizen, which we have here. I hope everyone's got their Hef out. I made a small cheese board. I'm not sure if everyone has their cheese at the ready. I can wait a second. I don't know if you could see it. I made a small cheese board with crackers and here, I'll give it a see. Oh, there we go. Check that out. I made a nice cheese board with all the things we're going to have. I have crackers, but if you have bread, or any other conveyance that's on the flavorless side, so the cheese really shines, that would be best. So I've got my Hefeweizen, and then I've got goat cheese. This is a drawing that I did, a little explanation. That's the vase. That's that flower vase that the glass would come in. So goat cheese, tangy and creamy. Everyone get a cracker or bread, and we'll have a taste. Goat cheese is a great light cheese. When we're talking about matching intensities, you really want goat cheese is a real nice one with lighter beers. When we're talking German wheat beers, wit beers, which is a white ale from Belgium, lighter like light ales, a Kolsch, a blonde ale. Again, you want to match intensity. So this is nice, tangy and creamy. So what's a Hefeweizen? So Hefeweizen is a German style wheat ale. Everyone knows Germany's real lager centric, Pilsners, Oktoberfest seasons going on right now. But in Bavaria, in southern Germany, there are German wheat beers. So it's a beer made with malted wheat, usually 50% or so. And then what that flavor is, where does the clove and banana come from? I have a little more of this because it's delicious. That all comes from the expressive yeast strain. So the yeast actually, so when you look at beer's made by 4 ingredients: water, hops, malt, and yeast. Each one of those ingredients, even the water, can add flavor and intensity to beers. And Hefeweizens get these flavors mostly due from its expressive Hefeweizen yeast strain. When beer is fermented, this is an ale. Quick side note, difference between an ale and a lager is basically it's a different yeast strain. Ales are Saccharomyces cerevisiae. Lagers are Saccharomyces pastorianus. Ales are fermented quicker and hotter. Lagers are fermented colder and longer. So they're matured usually in a lager vessel for about a month or so after they finish fermenting. We are only doing ales this evening, but I just wanted to explain that's the difference between an ale and a lager. So the Hefeweizen yeast strain is fermented, and it creates a couple byproducts. Yeast make a lot of different things. So which is crazy. How yeast work is they eat the sugar and they turn it into CO2 and ethanol, but they can also leak out organic acids and other ingredients that add flavor to the beer. So the 2 things you're tasting are banana, which is isoamyl acetates, and ester. All ales create certain esters. Isoamyl acetate is a special one created specifically by the Hefeweizen yeast strain. And clove, which is a phenol. It's a 4-vinyl guaiacol is what you're tasting. And that's clove. Most ale yeasts don't create phenols. They have to be what is called POF plus. So Belgians, when we get to that Saison Dupont, you're going to taste a lot of phenols. One of the reasons I really like this flavor is because we're talking about creating a new sensation, that contrasting. So let's try it. So everyone take a bite of the cracker. And then take a sip of, I don't mean to talk with my mouth full. How embarrassing. So when the 2 get together, there's a creation of this, I don't mean to talk with my mouth full. My mother was more watching. She'd be so embarrassed. You kind of create this fruit and cream sensation that's delicious. I'm going to have another one. Hefeweizens are also known for their high carbonation. And so when you eat this, it's delicious. Hefeweizens are pretty high carbonated as well. So the carbonation is going to really clear that palate, because there's something about Chèvre that can kind of linger on the palate. Goat cheese has that kind of almost not paste, but almost it's a thick consistency. And so with the Hefeweizen, it's going to clear your palate and create this kind of mouth napkin. So you'll be ready for another bite. I really like this pairing because, yeah, there's almost like a dessertness to it. It's very light. It's a great aperitif. It's a great appetizer pairing. If you put this out, other beers that would work with goat cheeses, the Belgians have a fruit lambic. Lindemans is a really sweet version. Cantillon, which is kind of hard to find, but other ones can be much more sour, and that's a really nice because the sourness complement each other, the tanginess of the goat cheese, the sourness of the beer. When it's on the sweeter side, you get this really nice berries and cream note. Fruit lambics are typically made with cherry or raspberry. So that's a really, really nice pairing. Cheers. All right. Well, is everyone having a good time? I can't see anyone, so I'm just assuming everyone's having the best time they've ever had.
The best time.
Best time, yay. Okay, good.
I also feel like I need to incorporate the term mouth napkin in my everyday life.
Yes, beer is a great the mouth napkin is actually a thing that I like. I don't believe anyone else says that, but I really like how higher carbonation beers and carbonation in general is a great scrubber. So it's almost like you're like cleaning your mouth out before you have another bite, so it's ready to eat more. And that's a great beer is a great kind of that's the one of the great things about beer is that it scrubs. It's like scrubbing bubbles. It's like cleaning the bathroom. All right, let's move on to the next one, which I'm super, super excited about. I'm so jazzed that we get to drink Saison Dupont. This beer is a beer geek favorite, and it's so easy to find for the most part. Every time I go to the store, I buy a bottle, and it comes in a large format too. It's a great food beer. We drank it on New Year. It's also a great New Year's Eve beer, and it's not expensive. A large format bottle of this is $10, and it's 6.5%, and it's just delicious. So give me 1 second, and I will open this, and then we will talk about Brie. And I hope everyone has a great Brie. If you got Camembert, that's fine. Any kind of bloomy rind, we'll talk about that in a second. Cheese will be good. So let's give this a pour. The thing I love about Saison Dupont is look at that head retention. Look at that head. And the thing about most Belgian beers are bottle conditioned, so they are naturally carbonated in the bottle, and it creates this great, beautiful, almost pearl necklace beading, and it's just phenomenal. It's definitely one of my favorite beers of all time. If anyone has the opportunity to go to Belgium, I highly recommend that you do. It's one of my favorite countries in the world. Everyone is very friendly. The food is very heavy but delicious. The beer scene is wonderful. A bottle of Saison Dupont there is probably going to cost you like €2, if that. It's wild. So, all right. So, Brie. Brie is a French soft cow's milk cheese, which is named after its location in France. France is cheese mecca. There are cheeses that I've never heard of before. There's a lot of cheeses we don't get because they're raw and there's rules and whatnot. The reason I paired this with Saison Dupont is that a Saison is also not just a Belgian style, but it's a French style as well. When you look at where it's made in Belgium, usually in the south part and overlapping into like far eastern France, that's the Wallonian section of Belgium is the French speaking part. The Dutch speaking part is on top, or French, excuse me, Flemish speaking part is at the top. So this is a area of Wallonia, southern Belgium, where these beers are made. They were made kind of, the history of a Saison is, which is French for season, was in the farmhouse in the summer. You made beer based on what you had, what was available. So Saisons can have oats, spelt, wheat, any kind of grains. There's gluten-free saisons. They can be really any alcohol. They can be from 3% to 10%. They can be dark. They can be light. It really runs the gamut. But the thing that's most important about a saison is the dry yeast-driven flavor. These beers are very highly attenuated. What that means is the yeast eat most of the sugars, leaving the beer incredibly dry, usually higher carbonated. Saisons can be, Saison Dupont is fermented at 95 degrees Fahrenheit, which is insane. That's mind-boggling. The normal beer is fermented. Normally another Saison would probably be fermented at like 75. But the fact that this is fermented at 95 is wild. I got to take a sip. Hold on. That heavy carbonation, that like bite, it's almost like you're getting bit back. It's called carbonic bite. The high carbonic acid and carbonation of the beer almost bites you back. And there's something when you put your nose in it, there's a heavy earthiness as well to this beer. And that's why I've paired it with, there's like earth, white pepper as well. And that's coming from the yeast-driven flavor, those phenols that I just talked about with the other beer. All right, let's pair. Got my cracker here. I got an extra gooey saison. Also, saisons are the rind. The bloomy rind is a white mold, but is edible. There's certain with the Gouda, it's got that red, like almost red rind. Don't eat that. But with saisons, the bloomy rind cheeses, that you can eat. All right, let's take a bite. You see in my notes where I'm talking about like a rustic pairing, there's a lot of earthiness in the Brie and a lot of earthiness in the Saison. That's a great complementary flavor. And the Saison Dupont is very carbonated. So you're once again getting that mouth napkin sensibility. You can almost hear it cleaning your palate. If you put it in your mouth and kind of hold it for a second and be quiet, you can hear the bubbles scrubbing away at all the fat from the Brie, since the Brie is quite fatty, quite dense. It's a great pairing, especially with something like the Saison, which is that French Belgian area, and Brie, which is a French cheese. It just works really well. Again, I would say this would be a great aperitif, appetizer. Saison Dupont's a great summer beer, or I mean, I love it all year round. It's so good. It's a great Thanksgiving. I know Thanksgiving is coming up in the next 7 or 6 weeks or so. It's a great Thanksgiving beer. If you know, I can just throw that out there, especially the large format bottles. It's a great pairing with Thanksgiving. Oh, it's so good. It's so good. I love that. Does anyone have questions before we move on to our Gouda? No? Excellent. Wonderful.
Everyone's just savoring.
Everyone's snacking. I'm sure everyone's snacking, chatting.
If everyone's been, good and hasn't touched their Gouda yet, wait for this Gouda.
Oh,
it's amazing.
Yes. So actually this pairing comes from a friend of mine, Andrew Malucci, who is the cheesemonger at the Whole Foods in Avon, Connecticut. And I bumped into him and I said, I'm teaching a class about beer and cheese. What's your go-to pairing? And he said, no stumbling, aged Gouda and brown ale. And so we're going to talk about that. I'm going to grab this can. I will say beer does make you burp a little, so I apologize. I'm not trying to be rude. But we're friends. We're all friends now, so it's fine. So Gouda, aged Gouda. So when you have young Gouda, It's paler and not as dense. And when you age it, it's going to get darker in color and it's going to caramelize and get sharp. And then there's those, yeah, the amino acids. We were talking about that earlier. And there's this crystals. Oh, it's just delicious. If you love like sharp, I love an aged cheddar. And so this reminds me a lot of that. So right now we are drinking I wanted to the last two are local beers. That was very important to me. Connecticut has a wonderful beer scene. If you haven't been out to explore the scene, do so either at local restaurants or go to the breweries. There's lots of great breweries in the Darien area, or take a drive, go up to Kent Falls, come over to the eastern side of Connecticut, go up to New Haven or Hartford. This is from Black Hog Brewing Company. They're in Oxford, so they're in the valley, the Housatonic River Valley. And this is their granola brown ale. I will talk about, so what's a brown ale? American brown ale. If you've ever had Newcastle, that's the English version. So UK ingredients and whatnot. That's a British brown ale. When American ingredients essentially Americanized the brown ale, made it a little darker, made it hoppier, made it more bitter, made it a higher alcohol. Usually when it comes to any American style, there's going to be more booze. I don't know what that says about us, but that's just how it is. So this is a brown ale, American brown ale. When we're talking about pairing it with aged Gouda, I was looking for, when you look at the with the 1,000-day Gouda with like the words, the flavors that it describes, it always says nutty. And when you think of American brown ales, there are no nuts. This has granola in it. But normally there are no nuts in brown ales, but there's always a nuttiness, a walnut, kind of a pecan character. This beer and this cheese essentially is like creating a grilled cheese in your mouth. I'm going to give it a quick sniff and smell. It's like a dark, there's something about American browns. I have kind of like a brown bread, deep toast. There's a little coffee, a little chocolate. So you're kind of getting the thing when you're talking about beer and food pairings is, am I hitting all the am I hitting the like bitterness, sweet, salty, umami? Am I hitting all these flavor attributes in one bite? And I feel like this pairing, the contrasting of the sweetness of the beer, even though this beer has some bitterness, with the saltiness of the cheese, it's going to be a really great pairing. There's a really famous beer writer named Brandy Mosier. If you're looking to branch out and read a beer book, Tasting Beer by Randy Mosier is by far the best beer book on the market. I'm obsessed with that book. I've listened to it on audio, which, okay. It's a great beer book. So if you're looking to get into some beer and food pairings, he has an entire chapter about it, and it's very easy to comprehend. It's a great book. I'm assuming the Darien Library has a copy. If not, you should get on that because it's a great beer book. So, but he talks about brown ales and Gouda as a great, or Alpine cheeses. So like these kind of Alpine or Dutch cheeses where there's like a nuttiness, kind of they're almost like a blank canvas to have the beer and the cheese meld into one. So, well, that's it's a great brewery. If you're in Oxford or up in that area, like up 84, highly recommend visiting Black Hog. It's a great brewery. So, all right, let's give this a go. Cheers. The cheese is so salty that when you get the sweetness from the brown ale, it's like being, oh God, it's like being hugged. It's just so, it works so well together. I have to tell Andrew that this pairing was a home run. It is. It's like almost like a grilled cheese because there's like a toasted darkness from the brown ale with the sweetness. Like when you make a grilled cheese, you get that kind of sweetness from the bread being grilled, excuse me. And then the cheese is just so salty. Um, mm, and it lingers. It was quite good. That's an excellent pairing. I'm obsessed with that aged Gouda. I'm going to buy it every day now. I love cheese. I don't know if you can tell, but I love cheese. I eat it almost every day. I eat it a lot. And so this is something that's super important and very passionate about. I'm very passionate about beer and cheese. So the crystallization of the aged Gouda and the sweetness of the brown ale and the beer and the thing about the brown ale is it's not that there's a bitterness to it. I'm sure you're all getting that. Um, it's such a great pairing. You get all the flavor sensations, and it definitely makes you want to go back for more. I would, yeah, include this on a cheese board, or I bet Gouda. I'm not sure if Gouda is a great melting cheese. I think it is. Make a sandwich out of it, or do
It
something with
melts pretty well.
it. Melts pretty well. I knew someone. I knew. Thank you. I knew you would know that.
So
Uh,
I have a question for you.
oh,
I love cheese too. And I'll have some fancy cheeses. I'll have some, non-cheeses like American cheese. Um,
I had
so
American cheese at dinner, so don't worry
if
about
we
it.
were gonna have an American, like a grilled cheese made with American cheese, what do you think would be a quality beer to pair that with?
Oh, it's so salty because like the butter and the flap. I call it the cheese flap. Um, the brown ale would be a great choice. Maybe something with a little more bitterness, like a nice like German Pilsner would probably be a really good pairing with that. Um, something really drinkable because that cheese, the grilled cheese is so salty that you'd want something to kind of wash it down quickly. Actually, I would suggest Weihenstephaner Originals, Munich Helles. So what the difference between what's a Pilsner, what's a Helles? It's just the focus on one of the ingredients. So German Pilsner has a focus on hops, so it's going to be drier and bitter.
Mhm.
The Munich Helles is focused on malt, so it's actually sweeter and less hoppy and very drinkable. It's the beer that everyone drinks when they go to Munich. A grilled cheese made with craft singles and like a big like stein or like a nice like tall Munich Helles would be because they make Weihenstephaner Original comes in a 500 milliliter bottle. Just one of those to yourself and a grilled cheese and maybe some like potato chips. That sounds like a great night to me.
Throw a pickle in there and you have a night.
Oh yeah, there you go with the salt and brine. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Munich Helles is the way to go. So
Thank you.
you're very welcome. So we're on our last pairing, which is the double IPA and blue cheese. Hold on, I've got too many glasses in front of me. So I've chosen when you go, and we all live in New England, and so we all know the I can't words. I had like half a beer. We all know that American IPAs are different than New England IPAs. When you go and get a beer now, the New England IPA, which we in New England created, lower bitterness, a larger mouthfeel because it's made with wheat and oats, more hop character, more flavor, not bitterness. When I'm talking about a double IPA, I'm talking about something that's hoppy, bitter, high alcohol, a real wrecker, and that is Road to Ruin from Up 95 in Stratford, from Two Roads. This beer is old school, which that means is double IPAs aren't really made this way anymore. It's a real nice nod, a real nice throwback. And this beer is excellent. So it was a great beer to end on. And double IPA and blue cheese. Side note, double IPA and carrot cake. You're welcome. It was one of the best food pairings of all time. So let me give this a pour. Give me a second. Oh, here we go. When you're talking about double IPAs, this is a classic color, this kind of deep golden, nice head retention. You can see through it. When we're talking about New England IPAs, they're quite hazy. Those hazy IPAs that are very popular now. It is not. We're talking about old school. These are the kind of beers that were popular oh man, 12 years ago, 2011, when I lived in Oregon, this kind of beer was everywhere, but it was higher alcohol and more bitter. It was wild. It was a wild time. So, double IPA and blue cheese. So, what is blue cheese? So, blue cheese is, I'm going to get my blue cheese all set here. It's made with, yeah, what's the, like, basically like penicillium. And you can either inject it or it's all around. There's lots of different ways to make cheeses. There's a great book if you're interested in how cheese is made called Mastering Cheese. It's a little hoity because the guy who wrote it's like the guy who rode the cheese cart around at fancy restaurants in New York City. So it is very intensive and technical and a little snobby, but it's a great book. He talks in great detail about Cato Corner, which is an amazing cheese. They make cheese in Colchester, Connecticut, in Eastern Connecticut. They win American Cheese Society awards. It's a mother and her son. It's the best cheese I've ever had in my life. If you can, I'm sure the Whole Foods in Darien has it, or the Darien Cheese Shop, if that's still around. Oh boy, I'm dating myself. I haven't been to Darien in a little while.
It is still around.
Okay, yeah, they would have Cato Corner cheese. Thank you. It is a little on the pricey side, but it is worth every penny. I'm obsessed with the aged Bloomsday. I'm obsessed with everything they make. It's very, very good cheese if you want to treat yourself. So anyway, blue cheese, we're talking about sharp, we're talking salty, we're talking mold. It's a very polarizing cheese. I'm obsessed with it. I think it's the best. And double IPAs are also really polarizing. It's the most bitter beer style. Bitterness in beer is measured in what are called international bitterness units, or IBU. Most beer styles, let's say, so like that Helles I was just talking about has an IBU of about 20. This has probably an IBU of about 90. After 100, your tongue can't discern. You basically like max it out. So this is pretty dang hoppy and pretty dang bitter. So we're getting a lot of flavor here. I bet a lot of hops are used in this beer. So give it a sniff. The thing I really like about double IPAs is that when you smell it, you get bitterness, but you also get like that fruit. Do you ever get like grapefruit, a little pine? So like you're not just getting like slapped in the face with bitterness, you're getting a lot of flavor as well. And that's why this pairing is really great, because you're getting a lot of flavor from the blue cheese, and what can stand up to that flavor is a double IPA. From the alcohol, alcohol also is a really great mouth napkin. Same with the bitterness. So let's give this a go. When blue cheese is, this is the KVH Blue from Trader Joe's. When like the blue cheese kind of like puts up a fight because it's so flavorful, the double IPA kind of, it's like a wave, rolls in. It's like, I got fruit, I got bitterness, I got alcohol, and they kind of like meld. Just like that herbal and bitterness blends well with the saltiness. It's a blend and they kind of meld together and then match the intensity. It is, it's a really, really good pairing. And especially with the Road to Ruin is on the drier side, so it's not too sweet. Sometimes double IPAs can be a little sticky. This is not. So it's just bitterness cleans your mouth and you can have another one. And that is a great, great pairing. Double IPAs are really, really good. And that's a great like end of the night. Because we're talking about what, 8% here? Yeah, we're talking 8%. So you could start your night, but it'll be a short night if you're a lightweight like I am. But this is a great double IPA is a great like food, having like a hamburger with blue cheese on it. And then this beer would be an excellent, excellent pairing, where blue cheese is kind of part of the picture, but not the whole thing. A double IPA would be really great to stand up to even the slightest bit. And then double IPAs are really great with dessert as well. Like I said, carrot cake, double IPA, you're welcome. It is the best thing I've ever eaten. The sweetness of the cake and the cream cheese frosting and the bitterness, it just all works. I just trust me on it. It's my favorite pairing of all time. So I always want to tell people about that. Yeah.
Now, where should we get the carrot cake? Homemade, or should we get it somewhere?
You can get it. You can make it or you can buy it. It doesn't matter. Just try it. It's phenomenal.
Okay. This is the third time I've heard you say this, so I need to act on this
I talk about it a lot. It's a Randy Mosher pairing, and I first had it 10 years ago, and it like blew my mind. And so I like wax poetic about how I love the like double IPA or just American IPAs in general and carrot cake. Also, carrot cake's my favorite dessert. So I just love carrot cake. It's just
it's a great dessert.
Yeah. I think that's it. Does anyone have any questions before we end? I'm happy to answer anything cheese and beer related, non-beer related. Here, I'll stop sharing my screen. Or anything like that.
I have a few questions.
Sure.
So if I'm sure being in the beer world that you kind of change your favorites as time goes on, depending on, new things are being introduced to you, or depending on your mood or how you're feeling, what food you are eating. What is your current favorite beer at the moment?
Switching.
Or if you have a top 5, that's fine too.
I love Allagash White. I think that's probably one of my favorite beers. And my other favorite beer is it's coming up on the Christmas season. So in the beer world, beers, they get what is called season creep, where they get released like pumpkin beers come out in August and everyone like freaks out. But then all the Christmas beers get released in October and everyone's like, yay! Sierra Nevada Celebration comes out, I believe, next week. It is nothing to do with Christmas. It just has a picture of a nice cabin on it, and the can is red, or the bottle. It's a wet hop beer. What that means is they pick the hops and use them within 24 hours. So they're still fresh. They haven't kind of degraded. And it lends a lighter, more nuanced approach to hops. And it is the best beer. It's dark, and it's very similar to Road to Ruin, but darker, much more bitter. It's a real there's something very nostalgic and old school about Celebration. It's a huge when people in the beer industry, when Celebration comes out, everybody loses. I have a Celebration shirt I wear all the time.
So the name is appropriate.
It's a celebration because it's Christmas and they've been making it forever. The Sierra Nevada has been around since 1979. They're a very large, well-respected brewery, and and then Allagash White.
I've never heard of it before. It's been around for a bit. The Celebration.
Celebration's been around, I want to say, since the 80s. And it comes around. You'll be able to buy it at the grocery store. You can go to any grocery store in the beer aisle will have a 12-pack or a 6-pack of it through Christmas. It's a phenomenal, it's just a beer lover's beer. It's really, really good.
Okay. Put it on your list, everybody. Look for it starting next week. Now, someone wants to know if you've ever made your own beer.
No, that's not true. I homebrewed once, and it turned out really poorly. I've made my own cider. I've taken unpasteurized cider, and I've made that, and it actually turned out pretty decently. I'm a participant drinker, and that I let everyone else brew, and then I just kind of hang out and wait for the product to show up. Brewing is a huge art form that involves so much science, culinary skill, janitorial skill. You got to be clean when it comes to brewing, and magic. You have to have just a little bit of magic to brew. And I'm always very jealous of people who can brew. I think it's a really great, noble profession. It's beer, and you're making beer. That's great.
And then someone wants to know, besides the October beers and the Christmas beers? Are there any special beers that come out, any other time of year?
Oh yeah, so there's a lot of seasonals. Summer beers are really great, mostly lighter stuff. Two Roads makes a really great raspberry wheat called Road Jam. Comes out in April. That beer is phenomenal, really dry, refreshing. It's got lemongrass in it, fresh raspberry. That beer is wonderful. Summer's a great time for just like low alcohol sippers from everything from that, or like hard cider or hard seltzer. Drink whatever you want. When it's hot, I love a good hard seltzer. Don't get me wrong. Um, Sierra Nevada, I'm not to like talk about Sierra Nevada a lot. They brew a really great barley wine called Bigfoot in January, and that's a great American barley wine. With that barley wine just is a high alcohol beer. There's no wine in it. It's just brewed very high strength. It's a really great beer, and they make one every year. It's great to age. I usually buy a 6-pack and shove 6 in the basement, and then I drank one last week. Actually, I had a friend visiting, and we opened one after 9 months, and it just beer aging when it's really high alcohol or really roasty can be aged. Like you wouldn't want to age a double IPA. Anything hoppy, like an IPA, you want to drink actually quite quickly. But when it comes to beers like barley wines, imperial stouts, a little bit of age on them can mellow them out and make them really nice. So Bigfoot's a great example of like you buy a 6-pack of it, you drink one now, and then a couple months later you can drink another one, and then you can see the progression because the beer will change. It's really cool how when beer ages, it gets maltier, it gets sweeter, it loses hop presence. Other things can happen when really old beer will call what is italicized, where it almost tastes like soy or meat because the yeast basically die and they explode and all their it's gross, sorry. All their stuff like basically like leaks into the beer. Yeah, and it's like it's not great. So you're like it reminds me of like carob or like healthy chocolate. It's not a great flavor. But that happens only with like beers who've been very not mistreated poorly or really old beer. Like if someone's like, I have this stout from 1999, it's not gonna be good.
Reminded me, I have to drink some beer. So if say we'll go off of that, if it's like a week or a month off the date, would you still like say go for it, drink it?
Oh
Or
yeah.
does it depend on the type?
If we're gonna go shopping, I highly recommend you buy things from the cooler. And you get used to looking at dates. A lot of breweries don't tell. So in Europe, they're required to have a Best Buy, I believe. Yeah, no, this one is weird. Like a lot of them have like, you won't be able to see it, I don't think, but there's like wording here where it was brewed, but it doesn't, it says like L2437A. And I'm like, I don't know what that means at 1421. So at least it was packaged, I think, at 2:21 and 53 seconds. But who knows? But a lot of places, Two Roads does it where it has a best before. So like best before February 10th of 2022, which makes me think that this is quite fresh. This probably has a 6-month shelf life. So don't get burned by buying things off. Like if this said like best by August of 2021, don't buy that because it's not going to taste the way the brewer wanted it. Best buy and board on dates are really like be the person that like looks under or looks at and buy from the cooler. Beer's like a vegetable. It stays fresher longer in the cooler. So make sure when you're shopping, certain things like this I bought off the warm shelf. Belgian beers have a really long shelf life for the most part because they're not hoppy and they are bottle conditioned. But for the most part, when you're looking for IPAs, which are super popular at the moment, shop from the cooler and start looking at dates because there's nothing worse than, and I've been burned and everyone has been burned before, where you get home and you're like, cool, I paid $13 for this 6-pack and they all taste terrible. And then you have to like pawn them off on like a person you don't like or something.
Just leave that at this party.
You bring it to a party, throw it in the cooler or something. Like,
forget about it. I've never done that before.
I've never done
Um,
it before either.
can you explain mead? I hear about it all the time. I still don't fully understand what it is. And do you like it?
So mead is fermented honey. So usually you take honey and what I'm not gonna lie, my knowledge of mead is not great.
Okay.
Because it's a totally different subset from beer. You can make it similar to it's almost more of a wine where you're taking an ingredient like grapes and letting them ferment. You do that with honey. You take the honey and you let it ferment. They're very, very popular because they're pretty high in alcohol, usually wine strength. They're they usually are fruited as well. Um, we don't have a meadery, I believe, or we do in Connecticut. I've never had it, or maybe I don't know. I'm not sure. Um, but that's what mead is.
Okay.
It can
I
be
had no idea.
carbonated. It can be still. I've judged mead competitions before. There's different. So like, there's three different. Most meads are like sack strength, which is like 17 to 18% ABV, so strong. When I judged, that's how much they were. And then they're pedalate, so like, or yeah, so they're like kind of. There's some carbonation, but it's like semi-sparkling, kind of like in that wine category. Um, and they definitely will mess you up. So that's all I gotta say about that. But they're great. I opened a bottle of Schramm's mead, which is a very fine meadery in Michigan, when our friend was visiting, and it was delicious. It's very like it's a lot because it's a lot of sugar because you take a lot of like the honey is all fermentable. It's essentially like 98 fermentable like percent fermentable sugar, and then the yeast kind of like work at it. And I think it's a pretty long process as well.
Yeah, I truly never knew about the honey component. I'm surprised I didn't know that.
Mhm.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So it's like, is it a beer? Is it a wine? Is it a hybrid? I don't
It's
know.
yeah, it's more of because it's not a beer because beer is taking starches and converting them to sugars.
Mhm.
So it's more of a wine where you're taking a already created like fermentable sugar and fermenting it. So you're taking the honey like grapes and you're letting it ferment similar to. So I would say it's more like a wine.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And then like another question, American versus the rest of the world, which area do you love the beers from the most?
Ooh, that's a hard question. Um, when it comes to beers in America, we have a lot of free reign. A lot of countries don't. Like the Germans have the purity law, the Reinheitsgebot, which has been on the books, at least in Bavaria, since I want to say 1516 or 1512, usually 1516, because it says it on the bottle. Um, Americans do what they want and they brew a lot of different stuff, but they also really look to tradition. And I really like that. Right now, what's very popular is Czech style beers. Um, Weird lagers and like big pours full of foam. They have a special faucet that creates a lot of like what it looks like wet foam. I can't describe it. Um, and they have different kinds of pours where there's like a certain amount of foam, or you can have a crisp pour, which would be similar to like America. Or you get a Milko pour because it's all white, so it's all foam, and you're supposed to just pound it.
Huh.
They drink the most beer per capita than anywhere else in the world. They love their beer. I've never been to the Czech Republic actually, but the styles in America are very popular right now, as are IPAs, and it's a joy to try going to breweries and trying their beers and seeing the varied aspects of. I'm talking at the Saratoga Book Festival next week, and the brewery that I'm speaking at has English styles on, American styles, German styles, and it's all they brew everything. And that's the great part about America is that everyone kind of brews everything. And so you get to try everything. And that's the cool part.
Let's see here. When you when traveling gets kind of back to normal,
Oh yeah.
where do you think your first like international trip that is like, beer forward would be?
I've never been I have very good friends in England, and I've never been to England. I've been to Scotland and I've been to Ireland, but I've never been to London, and I'm itching to go to London and drink cask beer, which the real ale. So how they create their beer is, or they don't have, it's so British styles are created by still fermenting beer. It gets put in a cask, sent to the bar, and then the publican, the person who's in charge of the pub rather, watches the beer and tests when it's going to be done. And when they deem it ready, they pour it. And it's pumped up by hand. You use like a hand pump, and it's open to the air. So like you got to drink it really quickly or else it goes sour really quickly.
Huh.
And that's why, and so there's like, it's very low carbonation and very like usually low alcohol, 3 to 4%. And so you can do pints after pints after pints, and it's served in cellar temperature, so like 55 degrees. So it's much warmer than the beer. Normally beer in America served about 38 degrees Fahrenheit. So and I've had bad real ale in Scotland, and I've been to a real ale brewery in Denver, Hogshead Brewery, which does traditional cask conditioned beers, but it's not England. So I've never had.
Okay. Well, I'm going in December, so I'll try.
Oh, really? Oh,
yeah.
If you're going to London, I'll give you suggestions on where to go, because I have really good friends in London and they have places that they go. But I'm itching to go to England. I'd love to go, and the Czech Republic, and I'd love to go back to Belgium, and see we've been to Belgium, my husband and I, a few times now, and we have friends there, and I haven't seen them since since February of 2019, and so it would be really nice to go back to Belgium and experience the beer scene again, because it's so classy. They really take beer so seriously and so professionally that it's quite nice, from the like lowliest bar to the highest Michelin star restaurant. It's very, very important to them. It's great.
Put Belgium on my list. So it's almost 8. I know some people out there might want to watch the game tonight.
Like myself, sorry.
Let me just double check to make sure we answered all the questions.
Of course.
There we go.
And if anyone has any questions, I'm on social media at Pints and Panels, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Feel free to message me if you have any questions about the cheeses and the beers that I talked about, or any other questions about beer. I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Em. This was amazing. I love everything you had to say tonight, and I am excited to dabble in my cheese and beer, which is fabulous. And I think we're gonna have to do a dessert pairing next time, and make sure everyone gets some carrot cake.
I love that. Let's do it.
Okay, maybe Valentine's Day. We'll
see. Email me. That sounds great.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you once again. Have a good night, everyone.
Yeah. Cheers.
Cheers.